This video looks at the second of the two writing questions, Analyse Review Comment. We'll look at these three writing styles and identify language techniques for each one. We'll examine some example responses and highlight the techniques in action. For this video, the issue of mobile phones in schools will be used as a theme. This is a controversial issue and clearly has advantages and disadvantages to discuss. Example responses will be written as though this is what the exam question asked about. We'll finish with some tips and advice to help you make a good job of answering your own exam question. Let's start with the definitions of analyse, review and comment. Analyse means to divide up an issue and closely examine each part in turn. In exams, this usually involves the advantages and disadvantages of an issue or the positives and negatives of something. To review is to examine an issue and make value judgments about it. This often means looking at the strengths and weaknesses of an issue, just like you would discuss the good bits and bad bits of a film you've seen. Comment involves giving restrained personal opinions about an issue. You should say what you think, but maintain a sensible, measured tone. You should notice that all three styles of writing involve you writing in a balanced, measured way. If argue, persuade, advise was about being biased, analyse, review, comment is about being more objective and fair in the way you write about an issue, while still getting your views across. Here's an example of an exam question about our theme for this video, the issue of phones in schools. The issue of mobile phones in schools is a complex issue. Parents like to be able to contact their children, but teachers often complain they are a terrible distraction in lessons. Write a speech to be given to staff, parents and students which analyses the advantages and disadvantages of mobile phones in schools. This question requires you to look at both sides of the argument and cover a few points for each side. Even though it says analyse in the question, it may still be possible to review and comment. The examples given in the video show how this can be done. Right, let's look at the three styles' language features. First, analyse. When you analyse, you should use present tense. You should also use the third person to keep your writing sounding balanced and objective. During an analysis, you should adopt a detached tone. This means that you're not really personally involved in the analysis. Hold back from giving your opinion until the conclusion. Connectives to build on or contrast points. These phrases will guide your reader through your writing and are very useful, especially if you're looking at complex issues with lots of points in favour and against. There should also be a clear development of each point made in each paragraph. This means explaining each point fully. Here is an extract from an answer which analyses the advantages and disadvantages of phones in schools. Parents like their children to carry a mobile phone because it helps them stay in touch. For example, if they are kept in for a detention, then the student can ring home to say they will be late. In addition, the news is always full of the dangers to young people in today's society. Mobiles help to reassure parents like those here today that their children are safe. However, the fact that most students now carry a mobile phone causes lessons to be disrupted. A teacher may be explaining a complex point only to be interrupted by a crazy frog. Moreover, students will often find a game on their phone to be more interesting than their learning. Each paragraph begins with a topic sentence which tells the reader what the paragraph will be about. There is then a clear development of each point within the paragraph through explanation and further points. There is 1 point per paragraph. The paragraph sticks to the point from the topic sentence and does not stray off. This will ensure your writing has a clear structure. Present tense is used throughout the analysis. Third person is used to avoid giving personal opinions until the end. A detached tone is used so that the writing sounds balanced and unbiased and maintains its analytical purpose. Connectives to build on points are used to develop and expand the analysis of a point. Other connectives to contrast points help to guide the reader through the writing and keep track of the ideas being put forward. Writing to review contains these language features. Present tense again, and third person with a detached tone. These three features again help to maintain a balanced viewpoint and avoid bias. Clear judgment should be given on the strengths and weaknesses of an issue. You may also make recommendations based on the evidence you found. Here's an example which reviews the school's mobile phone rules. The school policy toward mobile phones clearly isn't working as it stands. At the moment, students may carry a mobile phone, but it must be switched off and out of sight during lessons. Some students are not following this rule and have had their phones confiscated. Parents have complained about this, and teachers say that the learning of all students is being disruptive. It needs to be agreed that we cannot carry on like this, and new rules must come into force which will be more effective and suitable for all. As you can see, present tense is used in the writing. These pronouns keep the writing in the third person. Crucially, judgments are made about the success of the school's policy. Evidence is given for these judgments through explanation and expansion of the points. Based on this, recommendations are made as to what to do next to improve the situation. And here's an example of a phrase which maintains a detached tone and avoids personal bias. Comment, then, is your opportunity to give your own personal opinion. Typically, this will come in the conclusion once you've completed an analysis of the advantages and disadvantages of an issue. For this, you can use first person because they are your own personal opinions. When giving these opinions, they must be made clearly and in a convincing way, without going over the top and being too forceful. The opinions you give should be linked to and based on the analysis you did of the issue. As usual, explanation should be given which backs up your opinions and justifies them. Here's an example of writing to comment. Having pointed out that the current rules don't work, here's what I think we should do. Students need to accept that their learning is more important than their mobile. Phones are not allowed in the classroom, full stop. I think parents and students should sign a contract which agrees the phone will be confiscated if this happens. However, teachers also need to acknowledge that phones are an important part of modern life. I believe that if teachers sometimes include the use of a mobile phone in the lesson, for example a lesson on tech slang in English to learn about how language changes, the school may find that students happily accept the rules. Here, first person is used to make sure the audience knows it is the personal opinions of the writer. The opinions given are clearly a result of the analysis of the advantages and disadvantages of mobiles and a review of the current policy. The opinions given are clearly stated and sound reasonable and convincing without being expressed too strongly. Finally, explanation is given for holding these opinions so that the audience understands them clearly. So having looked at the three styles of writing, we now need to briefly look at what will be asked in the exam question. The question will ask you to write about a particular issue with form, audience and purpose in mind. Form means the type of text you'll write. This might be a letter, an article for a newspaper or magazine, a report or a speech. You will need to follow the rules of the form you are asked to write in. For example, you would end a letter in a completely different way to a speech. Audience is the individual or group of people your writing should be aimed at. Depending on audience, your language choices will change. A letter written to an MP will need to be written quite formally, whereas a speech to a class of teenagers might use a more informal approach and contain examples of slang. The purpose refers to the style of writing you will use, either analyse, review or comment, or perhaps has been shown, a mixture depending on how the question is worded. Here is our example question again on the issue of mobile phones in schools. Let's identify the form, audience and purpose. The form is a speech, presumably to be made at a meeting. The audience is parents, students and staff, so this means I'll have to keep my language formal and make sure I cover a range of points which concern all of the groups of people at the meeting. My purpose will be to analyse the advantages and disadvantages of mobile phones in schools. I will need to cover both sides of the argument and perhaps comment on how I think the problem should be solved in my conclusion. To finish off this video, here are the essential points you need to remember for this question. Read the question thoroughly, then read it again. Identify the topic, form, audience and purpose and make sure you understand completely what it is you're going to write. If you're feeling confident enough, potentially think of a role you could write in. Spend 5 minutes planning your points. Plan to write about one major point in each paragraph. Always stick to the writing and the style indicated by the question. Try to start your answer in an interesting but balanced way that fits in with the form. Crucially, use paragraphs to structure each of your points. You must use paragraphs, otherwise you risk limiting your mark to a D grade. Use connectives to build on points you make, such as moreover, in addition, on top of that, first, second, third, etc. And use other connectives to contrast points, however, by contrast, on the other hand, etc. Finish with a balanced conclusion which sums up the main points you've made for both sides of the argument. It might be a good idea to say what you think about the issue to finish off your writing. Finally, be aware of time. Spend 45 minutes on this question, including the 5 minutes of planning time. As always, thanks very much for watching. There are many more videos on our YouTube channel covering the GCSE English exam. Please leave comments telling us what you think, and we all wish you the very best of luck.